there he is.
You see?
I see what?
I can do this.
Yeah, thank you for you got the hang of it after a little while. That's it, us.
Yeah, it works very well. Now, if I'm not mistaken, our special guest, if he's watching right now, will just be able to watch, and then the request will come up at the bottom, and he can just press on it. Is that correct?
That's how Instagram Live works. Yes, I'm glad you've been able to figure it out, right? So that's a good sign when social media is able to get even people in the approaching senior citizenship. Right?
Well, if I could figure it out, then certainly he could figure it out.
Right, and that will be Mike Rodriguez, who is one of the best cutmans in the sport of boxing and was in the corner of the winning fighter, Dmitry Bivol, who just defeated with a big upset over the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Canelo Alvarez, in a fight that, Russ, I'm sure you were surprised at the result because you had been, of course, a big fan of Canelo in the last few fights like everyone else, but you've also kind of, I think, were under the impression, based on having seen even Canelo from being in the opposite corner for a few fights, that Canelo was almost untouchable these last few fights. And now he moved up against Bivol Saturday. A lot of people thought, listen, Bivol is a tough customer, a very good boxer, not somebody who's shown to be vulnerable to power, not necessarily going to knock you out, but has boxing ability to win this fight. Ended up being quite a good boxing lesson for Bivol, and maybe not the best fight of all time, but certainly a very good performance for the light heavyweight champ.
I'm anxious to ask Mike what his thoughts were from the corner. You know, I know that I had a different outlook in the two occasions that I worked against Canelo. It was two very different Canelos that I saw. And in the fight against Callum Smith, you know, I saw a very powerful, very strong, you know, Canelo and very difficult to hit, very quick. I want to ask Mike what he thought, because I don't think we saw that, especially after round 4. It would be interesting to hear what he said in the corner, but it would be interesting to hear what the corner had to say and what he had to say in his corner. There you go. Boxer Rod just joined, so when we're ready, we'll send them the request. You know, hopefully you can figure that out. Mike, if I could figure it out, you could figure it out, okay? So sit tight and we'll get to you. But like I was saying, I want to ask him what he thought about that. Obviously, the big talk about the fight, yes, a huge upset, 5-1 underdog, scores a massive victory, and not close either. Like,
we'll get to that, right? That's a huge storyline, how the scorecards were messed up, and Mike talked about that on social media throughout the last few days, and rightfully so. It was a disgrace.
Well, okay, you're right. It was a disgrace, but you know, it's funny. The disgrace happened in the first 4 rounds, because I studied the cards last night, and I wanted to see, you know, where the judges, if they were agreeing with the scorecard I had. Starting in round 5, scoring round 5, they didn't miss a beat. They scored every round exactly as it should be scored across the board. There was more unanimity in the combined scorecards than I've seen in a long time in boxing. And yet I also saw the same unanimity in the first 4 rounds, in which they gave all first 4 rounds to Canelo, which to me was, you weren't even watching. What did you call it? Like a copy-paste thing. What did you say? Yeah. It's like copy-paste. They was, okay, writing it down. They were supposed to. What's that?
They're just going through the motions, expecting the big name Canelo to win the fight. So let's give it a 10-9 because it was, you know, let's just give 10-9 for the sake of giving 10-9.
You know, because I had the fight scored 2-1-1 after 4 for Canelo. 2 rounds to 1 with 1 even. I felt the first round was kind of like nothing really going on. Canelo walking forward, the other one Bivol using the jab. Nothing really landed. A few good shot here and there, good blocks, you know, good defense on both their parts. I didn't think somebody earned the round, and that's something else, you know, maybe Mike can chime in on as well, because like it's bothering me, this thing of you can't score an even round. How is that even possible in any sport, that you cannot have an even segment in
right.
Whether it's a period of hockey or a quarter of football, you know, it's even. So I had it 2-1-1. At best, you go 2-2 if you had to. But there is no way that there was a 4-round shutout for Canelo, as if he was the only guy in the ring on that night. And that's what skewed the cards, you know, at the end. That's what made for those close rounds. And That's why it's so important. Like, you know, when we score rounds, you know, and you just casually give away rounds, even if it's nothing round. A guy wins a round on a nothing round, and that could play an effect, you know, early in the fight that you score that way plays an effect in the final score down the road. And that's exactly what happened in this fight. And that's why, you know, there was a possibility that if Canelo had gone out in the last round and by some reason, you know, grabbed thunder by the tail and won the last round or scored a good clean shot that might have shook the kid and wins the round, the fight ends up a draw, that would have been an atrocity. You know, would have been just as bad as Holyfield and Lewis and all the other bad decisions we've seen in boxing. And that shouldn't be, because you didn't pay attention and score the first rounds, the first 4 rounds like you should have, because they played a role in the outcome of the fight.
Going into the fight, Russ, you were saying a lot that the concern for you was whether or not Bivol would be able to touch Canelo. But the one thing I liked a lot about the strategy for Bivol, and it seemed even early on, it was that he wasn't looking to necessarily hurt Canelo, but just destabilize him, not letting Canelo get into a groove. And Canelo lately, and he did it at 168, he was able to overpower guys so much. And we had somebody on the feed write this. It seemed like as if he's getting more and more in love with his power and that one punch, big counter shot. And Bivol, just with the jab, just staying busy, never seemed to be in a nervous position and always seemed to be in control. Even from the early get-go, you said, okay, listen, this is not going to be easy for Canelo.
The other thing he did was he, unlike other opponents, he didn't stop punching after he missed the shot. So Canelo was in the habit of going, hook, 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 you know, to slip. Yeah. And then there was still more. Most of the guys stopped after that. This guy kept throwing. So now Canelo's going back, he's backpedaling. Now there's more stuff coming at him. Not everything is landing, but he kept coming at him, throwing punches, and he kept Canelo on the defensive. And that takes a big thing, a big weapon away from Canelo when you stop punching. When you keep punching, it takes away a big weapon, because now he's forced to go into that defensive mode. And look, eventually, you know, you're throwing a lot of rice, something's going to land, you know? And that's what Bivol did. And he kept him on his heels. He backed him up. He bullied Canelo a little bit, you know, which was, again, another great strategy in bullying him and pushing him. He didn't crumble under the shots. And I don't know why, but it just seems that lately, and you mentioned this, Matt, I got to give you credit for this. You mentioned in the training videos that we've seen, like you said, he's fallen in love with his power. And he was, you know, every shot we see of him training is just loading up. Now, it's good. There's good power. But, boy, you know, he started falling in love with that. And then they figured they discovered the secret of the century in boxing of let's beat up on the left bicep, you know. Like,
yeah, because he did it against Callum Smith. But Bivol talked about the fact, listen, you can hurt my arms, but you didn't hurt my head.
That's right. That's right. And, I mean, he did damage Callum's arms. His left bicep, he tore the bicep. He did do damage with that. But, you know, again, you're doing that. You're supposed to do other things that go with that. You know what I mean? But he just kept focusing on it. And I remember when I was watching the fight, he kept swinging that right hand around, swinging. And I said to the people I was watching the fight with Louis and Silo, I was watching the fight. And I said, watch, he's getting him to look for it around, and then he's going to come down to the body, or he's going to come in straight. You know, he's distracting him. He's making him think something's coming this way. Never changed. It bothered me that he never altered his plan of attack. He never adjusted, you know. And is it overconfidence? You know, I've had people tell me, well, no, let me give credit. Louis V said to me, you know, he's fell in love with golf. And he fell and golf and
really,
golf.
that's what you're going with?
Huh?
You think that's a legitimate reason?
Listen, it takes 4.5 hours to play a round of golf. You know, you're out in the sun all day playing that. That's not healthy. It's not good. You don't spend 4.5 hours out in the sun and expect to be in prime shape to train. Then there was also the part about the vegan diet, you know, being a vegan. And you know what? That's why I want to ask Mike, you know, did he look as strong to you as well? There's a lot of things that just didn't.
Also, maybe the ball was no easy task to begin with. Like, and that's why I have to give credit.
On top of that,
he chose that fight. He has now the big money guy in boxing. He can choose the opponents. He didn't choose an easy fight. And Bivol had never really shown any vulnerability. He had become boring in some of the fights that we expected a little bit more offense. Like when he was in control, he wouldn't necessarily go for the knockout. But Bivol was going in with the utmost confidence, the right strategy. And really what I liked a lot was the counter shots, even when he was near the ropes. You know, if Canelo took
That,
boom, left hook came right away. So that to me is also one thing. Maybe Bivol was underrated slightly because of the fact that he just didn't have the prestige of a Canelo going into this bout.
yeah, maybe, but he did all the right things. Like technically, he did all the right things. He tucked up, catch, and countered right away. You know, and that's you always try to tell a fighter when you're fighting an offensive fighter like Canelo is to punch in between. You know, like he's trying to load up. You want to be able to hit him and catch and throw back right away, and he did do that. There,
oh, oh, oh,
oh, you sleeping on the job?
I was just waiting. I'm
just
sleeping on the
waiting.
job.
I see.
The man who was in the winning corner this past Saturday night doing a heck of a job, Mr. Mike Rodriguez. How you doing,
Yeah,
Mike?
man. You know, it's funny, man. You become super popular. I've become real popular the last couple of days. You know, I got better looking, I guess. I don't know.
Don't knock it, because now when you're going to lose a fight, they're going to forget about you. So.
Oh yeah, hey, you know this is a fickle world and a fickle sport that we were rushed. You know that better than anybody, man. You've gone through the paces of this for over what 5 decades now, so you know.
Yeah, it's don't rush me. It's 4 decades and a few years. So, but yeah, that's right.
How you guys doing, man? It's good to see you guys. I know when I hated last time when I was in Montreal and you know you were on lockdown, Russ, but thank God you're doing well. And I think I mentioned in a text, Matt, that you know last couple of weeks I see Russ and Mike Basil and Stitch and they're working all the big fights, and I'm over here at home, you know, eating hot dogs and potato chips, and I'm like, you know, this Bivol fight couldn't happen quick enough, and then to beat somebody of Canelo's stature and you know his greatness, man, it just I couldn't let Russ, you know, take a victory lap around me and lap me coming around. So, but it's
you got a good one. I'll give you that. You got a good one. That's a huge upset, a 5-1. You're in the corner of a 5-1 underdog. Like they say, you know, you shook up the world on this one, and you were part of it. That's a good one, Mike. That's a real good one.
Yeah. You know, it's those moments that you live for because they don't grow on trees, and you know they don't happen every day. If they happened every day, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't be upsets. They wouldn't be upsets, would they?
They wouldn't be upsets. And you guys mentioned something, and I'm gonna kind of add to it. You know, boxing's a fickle thing, and you know, in the old days, great fighters fought each other. And now, what's the big knock on most of these guys? They don't fight each other. Canelo loses a fight, and all of a sudden, you know, people are, oh, he needs a new trainer, or maybe he's this, maybe he's that. You know, maybe he ran into another great fighter, a la Sugar Ray Leonard when he fought, you know, Roberto Duran in your neck of the woods. You know what I mean? You know, when Tommy Hearns fought Ray Leonard, when Marvin Hagler fought Ray Leonard, and the list just goes on. You know, De La Hoya and Mosley and De La Hoya and Trinidad and all these. That's what fighters are supposed to do, right? The Boston Celtics don't say we don't want to play the LA Lakers, you know, in the 80s. Imagine if the Lakers and the Celtics just said, you know, man, we're really not going to play, but we're all going to both consider ourselves the best.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we can see the best in our sport, and obviously a lot of the times we see not the best.
And where does this rank, that win with Bivol, Mike? Where does this rank in your career of being an experience of a big fight?
Oh man! I mean,
that's got to be a big one. That's got to be a big one.
It's top 3. And I was on another podcast, and they asked me, obviously working with Manny Pacquiao, 8 division world champion, sharing that with Freddie when he beat Keith Thurman. For personal reasons, when Julian Williams beat Jarrett Hurd, and with just a masterful performance, we beat Jarrett Hurd in his hometown after being knocked out by Charlo a couple years before. This one is right up there. It's definitely in the top 3. I think right now I can feel like it's the top 1 because I'm still on that high. And you guys know this. It's about doing these things, but you don't do them alone. You don't do them alone, and it's the people that you do it with. You know, Russ and I, because of what we do, will probably never ever work in the same corner. I would love to one day just for the hell of it. But a lot of the times, Russ and Stitch and I, Mike Basil, Danny Milano, Rudy Hernandez, we work against each other. You know what I mean? So one guy's on a high, you know, and then exactly. I try not to get too high. And the one thing that I try to do, I try to always be genuine. I'm always happy for other people's success. If they're happy for mine, hey man, that's even better. But the one thing that I love right now is when you look at all the top guys that get to work cuts with all these top fighters. They're some of my best friends in boxing, man. There's no backbiting. Yeah, sometimes a guy will leave you and go with another guy, but that's just the nature of the business. You know what you're signing up for, and I'm always happy. When I see somebody like Russ, I'm happy because he's like me, man. He's a boxing lifer. He's been doing this, and I don't want to piss anybody off, but he's been doing this since Jesus Christ was teaching in Omaha. Right? And Jesus Christ taught in Omaha a long, long time ago. You know what I mean? So it's just it's a good feeling, man. And now you got all the what ifs and all the pound for pound list and all that. And I just said, you know what? Let the fight take care of itself. Let the fighting take care of itself. And,
Mike, you said something. You said something when you were going to do the fight. You said that you couldn't let me and Basil and Stitch take all. And you know what? I thought about that, and I said, it's true. Like it seems to be like one of us is involved in a big fight, or somebody is there watching this, and you're looking. And I pay attention when I see Basil in the corner. I pay attention when I see you in the corner. I pay attention when I see Stitch. Who's he working with? Who's the guy? It's fun, It's fun to watch that, and we all have our moment, And here I was. Basil and I both came out of Madison Square Garden just a couple of nights before in an epic night. And now you go and you trump us with this one with a 5-1 underdog win. You waited.
Yeah, who knew I was holding pocket aces?
Yeah, I mean? That's right. That's right.
Well, hey, let me give you an example. You just mentioned Mike Basil, and I love Mike, and he worked with Katie Taylor, right?
Yeah.
But here he is a week later, and they called him to work 2 undercard fights that weren't even on TV when there was 12 people at the T-Mobile Arena.
We're gonna have to get him on too.
And Thursday, I'm gonna work a club show here in LA. It's a pretty damn good club show, Tom Loeffler's 360 Promotions. So I really don't call it a club show because it's on UFC Fight Pass with 4 guys from Freddie Roach's Wildcard Gym. My son and Andrew are gonna split duties. And then I'm going to work with Jerron Boots Ennis on Showtime on Saturday on the PBC card.
Nice.
So it's just, there's a saying, and I might have mentioned to you guys last time, and Russ can really attest to this because you don't know what the good Lord and Father Time has in store. I work every fight with the enthusiasm that it's the first fight I ever worked.
Me too. Yeah.
4-round fight in a smoky ballroom at some Indian casino that you can't pronounce, or a fight at the T-Mobile Arena or MGM or Madison Square Garden. I also work every fight like it could be my last fight. You just don't know.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, sometimes it's not about the destination. You got to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, 100%.
You got to enjoy the journey, and when you do it with people that you care about, that you have real genuine feelings for, pinch us. We're pretty damn fortunate. We've worked hard. I always tell people, you don't see Russ and Baz and Danny and Stitch and Rudy and him and myself in the corner. It doesn't happen by accident. Right. It doesn't happen by accident. I had a good talk today, and I know Russ, with Roger Anderson, who works a lot with Robert Garcia's guys.
Yeah.
Me and Roger had a good talk, and it's crazy because before the pandemic, we took for granted, because we're both here in SoCal, that we used to see each other all the time. We saw each other in Dallas 3 weeks ago, and I hadn't seen Roger in over 2 years.
Crazy, huh?
Because of the pandemic. And it's like, I don't even think we both realized that we had the affinity for each other that we did, because we were both super happy to chat and to see each other all weekend. And now we chatted today. And
that's crazy. Yeah.
And because we take it for granted sometimes. And there's times where we're in the same city working fights, but we both got our own duties and things that we need to do. So we probably don't get to have dinner and chop it up as much as we would like. We always probably do the thing, well, hey, we'll get to, but you know how it goes. You got things to do with your team and travel, and there's a lot of different dynamics. Hey, Russ can't get over to have dinner because so and so's having trouble making weight, or whatever it is, or I couldn't get into the fight till later because I was working a fight somewhere else the night before.
No. Russ never misses dinner.
Okay.
Don't worry. Russ never misses dinner. Okay. So, but you're right. I haven't seen Roger in probably what's been 2 years now. Yeah, you're right. The same.
Yeah. And I love talking with Roger because when I was just getting going into this thing years ago, Roger was a guy that I used to see all the time. All the time. I was working a lot of top ranked shows, and obviously he works with Robert, and Robert, for a while, I didn't want to jinx him, but I think Robert damn near had everybody. He was training everybody at top rank at the time.
Right.
When Cameron Duncan was still working a lot with top rank. So, but it's kind of the things we take for granted. And it's crazy, Matt, and this is honest to God's truth. Russ is always somebody that I respected, and I would see him. But I made an attempt a few years back to make sure that we weren't just, hey, how you doing, Russ? Hey, Mike, how you doing? Good luck. I made it a point that I make sure that me and Russ were going to actually be friends, and we were going to be able to communicate and have that kind of friendship. Because when I see somebody with the knowledge and the passion that he has, and he's such a wealth of knowledge, and he's always so honest about things, and I try to be the same way. That maybe someday when I have 5 decades, or 4 and a half, if you're splitting, you know what I mean? That I can do the same thing, and I mean that, Russ. And I always want you to know that.
But I know.
Russ,
Mike.
this is not about Russ though tonight. It's really nice of you, but we got to talk about this big Bivol win. So I want to know first and foremost, when did you start working with Bivol, and how was that relationship with seeing it in the corner and that fight evolve? Because me and Russ were talking about it, how the scorecards were terrible.
Yeah.
I know that at the time.
I worked with Dmitry for the first time in 2015 when he was 2-0 in Russia. I was in Moscow with Denis Lebedev. He was fighting Yuri Kalanga. It was crazy. Yuri Kalanga is from the Congo. Denis Lebedev was from Moscow, but they both had to travel to Moscow because they were both training in LA. Everybody was kind of on the same plane. Here we are going to Moscow for this huge fight, but everybody's coming from LA.
No. Wow.
Yeah. So Vadim, Dmitry's manager, who does a great job, said, hey, do you mind getting to the arena a little early? I didn't even know what time it was over there or what day it was. And he says, we got this young kid, and he's going to be a world champion. And who was it? Dmitry Bivol. I hadn't worked with Dmitry since then. He's very loyal to his Russian, his Russian trainers and stuff over there. But the one thing, because he trains in Southern California, and I've worked with a lot of fighters from his management group, with Denis Lebedev, with Victor Postal, and a host of other guys, is that Dmitry and I and his trainer Gennady from Russia have always been very friendly. And we would see each other a lot at the gyms and at fights. So when this fight happened, I didn't think I was going to get the job. I'm going to tell you why. I worked with his stablemate Butiev when he won the title from Jamal James. I worked with him with Joel Diaz. Joel Diaz is one of my best friends in the world. Well, guess who Butiev fights in his first defense? He fights Stanionis from Lithuania.
Right.
He trains at my home gym, a wild card, with Marvin Somodio.
Who just joined us, by the way. Marvin just joined us.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And so they asked me, Mike, can you work with Butiev? And I says, I can't. I work with Stanionis. I've worked with him for several years. I work with, most of Marvin's guys. We're like out of the same gym. Mike totally understand. They're pros. Mike totally understandable. So in Dallas, I had to go against them. So I figured, man, I blew this chance. And they said, but hey, are you free on May 7th? Because Dmitry asked to work with you. And, it just kind of went from there. And then it was like, hey, it's not a done deal. And then it was a done deal. And I'm not one of those, I'm not going to be posting it out, until I get my travel, man. Russ knows that. Until you get your travel, man, because I've seen fighters that want to work with you. And then they tell you, Mike, there's no travel because I'm taking my girlfriend or my brother. They're using that fighter +3, So It was great because, like I said, I got to work with Gennady and Joel and the whole management group with Vadim and Oleg and Alec and everybody else that comes along with it. And we'd all worked together before. Russ knows this, man. There is nothing quite, besides your children being born, man, there is nothing quite like working a world title fight with thousands of people in the arena and millions of people watching around the world. That is not cliche. It doesn't grow on trees. Championship pedigree doesn't grow on trees. And if I can just be a small part of that and be included with some of the people that we've mentioned, it's just a blessing, man. And I'm very fortunate.
Mike, how was from your view from the corner, like your thoughts on the scoring, your thoughts on what did you see, how powerful, like I mentioned to Matt earlier that in the 2 times that I worked against Canelo, especially the second time against Callum Smith, I found him very powerful, you know, fast, and he punched hard. And there's Marvin saying hello. And
hey, what's up, Marvin, man? And you know, shout out to Marvin because he's worked with many champions with Freddie, but Stanionis was Marvin's first homegrown world champion. And as a trainer or as a cut man, everybody always remembers their first world champion. And I guarantee you that's not going to be his last.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know absolutely. And we love Staniotis as well. He's a great guy. I wanted to know what you thought about, you know, the scoring, what was going on in the corner. I know maybe your Russian is not as great, but what was being said to Bivol? How did you feel in there? Because like I said to Matt earlier, after the first 4 rounds, so starting from round 5, the judges didn't miss a beat. They got everything right after that. But
I don't know.
I don't know. Lunch in the first 4.
I'll get to the first part first. We felt the fight was going great. Canelo now, and I don't want to give to, I doubt he's listening to me, but he loads up a lot. Yep. And to me, as a former fighter, or even when I train guys, the shots that hurt you the most are the ones you don't see. If you remember the combination that Ray Leonard hit Davey Boy Green with when he hit him with that first shot, guarantee you that was the last thing Davey Boy Green shot before Ray Leonard hit him with that 3-piece and knocked him cold out.
Yeah.
Dmitry has a very calm demeanor. He has high pedigree. He has high character. It's not his first rodeo. He's been a world champion for 5 years. It was, I believe, his 8th defense. He's a strong guy. He doesn't get rattled. I think some guys just have a good rhythm with other guys. The scoring, I don't know how in the world all 3 guys could say that. And you kind of,
that's crazy.
You kind of hinted at it, Matt. It's almost like they expect that Canelo's going to win the rounds. Russ, you made a great point. If there's no score in a hockey game after the first quarter, what's the score?
0-0. It's tied.
They don't tell like the Montreal Canadiens like, hey, we're giving you guys the goal because you guys skated faster that round. All right.
Yeah.
A lot of your first rounds in world title fights with very, very high level elite fighters historically have gone that way. They're almost kind of a wash.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes these judges are predisposed to automatically assume that we're going to give Canelo the round. Okay. If Canelo had any success in this fight, it was in the first 4 rounds.
Correct.
But the score wasn't 4-0.
No.
No.
I don't know if you heard. Yeah, I don't know if you heard.
I did.
Okay, so I had a 2-1-1, you know, and so yeah.
And I think realistically we had it probably, and I always play devil's advocate for this, Russ, because I've worked many fights where the judges came in with duct tape, a ski mask, and a shotgun and robbed my guy. Yeah. That it was probably 2-2. I would be hard pressed after that round to give Canelo more than 1 round.
That's what I gave him, 1 after that, yeah.
Just to err on the side of caution, I thought it was 8-4. If you put a gun in my head, I would have told you it was 9-3. I would have told you it was 9-3. And one thing Dmitry did, and you said it earlier, Matt, when he missed the shot, he just kept going. And eventually, people don't realize, man, slipping and ducking punches takes a lot out of you. Especially when Canelo would punch him, Dmitry would block, and next thing you know, who's going backwards?
Yeah.
Canelo's going backwards, and Dmitry surprised me with that little check hook he was using.
Yeah.
He would cover, almost like you're doing a mitt routine where somebody comes and you do earmuffs and they hit you with one side and then the other side, and then you come back with a little hook. His jab was fabulous. His jab, he was jabbing at the body. We told him not to ignore the body. The one thing, and we respect Canelo, he's a great champion. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Hopefully you guys don't feel any different. But we told him, don't show him any respect. You can show him respect before the fight. You can show him respect after the fight. This guy's trying to take your world title. And about the 6th round, Dmitry came back, and we said, as he's walking back, he hasn't even sat on the stool, and Joel Diaz says, no respect. And he took a deep breath when he sat down, and he looked at us up. And Russ knows that look when guys look up at us because we're standing over them, and he says, no respect. Because Dmitry speaks good English. He speaks really good English.
Yeah.
Listen, Mike, a star was definitely born, especially with his post-fight interview afterwards. I mean,
that was classic when they asked him that question.
It was class for sure. You know, that showed his character as a fighter and his personality that came out from that very same branch. You know, that's exactly what he exhibited in the ring as a fighter. He exhibited in the interview as a man afterwards. So
what gets lost in the shuffle, and you know this, Canelo's a superstar, man. He is. I mean, he's a superstar. But there are other great fighters in this world as well. And sometimes when you come under the bright lights and, you know, your introduction takes 12 minutes, you know, and they're bringing you out like Bret the Hitman Hart, you know, and Shawn Michaels in the WWE. And I don't take any way think Canelo deserved that. If that's what he wanted, he's a superstar. He gets the superstar treatment. But at the end of the day, man, you still got to play the game.
Yeah, once the bell rings. Yeah.
That's one thing that was noticeable, Mike. It was just how poised Bivol was throughout this press conference. It wasn't like the moment was too big for him at all. He didn't do any trash talk, just laser focus, and was able to box as if it was a regular fight.
Let me ask you a question, man. We all have pride. We all have egos. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody does. Whether Russ likes it or not, he is a brand. You know what I mean? Nobody likes to be slighted. Not even in the smallest way does a person like to be slighted. And don't think for a minute. I don't want to speak for Dmitry, but human nature tells me, guys, when you're looking around, it's like, wait a minute. Okay, he's got it. Why not me? Why not me? And I don't want to speak for him, or, you know, I don't know his thought process, but looking at the way he conducted himself in the end result, I mean, he wasn't fazed by any of this. I think his big thing was like, okay, this is all great, and we're doing press conferences, and we're wearing pajamas, and we're doing all kinds of things. But you know what, man? And we got pyrotechnics, and they wouldn't even acknowledge where Dmitry was from, and you know, everybody know he's not from India. You know what I mean? He trained in India. I don't like to get into the political end, but I think everybody deserves respect. No matter how you feel about a situation, everybody deserves respect. And I don't think in his heart of hearts and the deepness of his core, don't think that was lost on him. You know, he's a very prideful guy. He comes from a very prideful land. Whether you like it or not, he's a high character guy. He's got high pedigree. And at the end of the day, he beat the consensus pound for pound world champion.
And the other thing that's interesting is that after the fight, I thought Bivol carried himself. He was a bit more loose, kind of smile, I think, for the first time in a little while. But he even said at one point, listen, forget Canelo, the rematch at 175. I might be even willing to go down and get all his titles at 168, which I don't think necessarily is what the fans want to see. I think they'd rather see Bivol fight the winner of Russ's guy, Bertabia, versus Joe Smith next month. But Bivol, never backing down from a challenge, says, I'll fight Canelo at 168 to get all his belts.
Well, if they do that, Russ is buying dinner, Matt. Russ is buying dinner, man.
We're going to be there for more than just one dinner, so we can swap. No,
yeah, okay. There you go. Yeah, I don't know. The next move is going to be interesting. And I think that's what's so compelling about it. And maybe this is we've had some pretty good fights lately, Russ. We have. The boxing community was always complaining. It's not really the boxing people. It's, you know, the whole fandom and social media. Well, look at Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, man. Look at Beefy Smith, man. Talk about
That was
turning back
a hell of
that.
a fight.
I mean, he looks, and don't tell him if he's listening. What's up, Beefy? Because I worked with him one time when you weren't available, and he's a great guy. But he looks 65 years old, man. He looks, and when Russ is in the corner with him, Russ looks younger than him.
Easy now, easy.
But he had a really good performance, and I was very happy for him because
he had a great performance. Actually,
Russ,
it was better than really good.
Beefy has fought a lot of really, really top guys, man.
Including Canelo.
What was that?
Including Canelo, right? That's what Russ was saying.
That's right.
Yeah, Russ was there at Cowboy Stadium in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
I was there as well.
Yeah.
So, I'm first of all, I'm glad to be talking to you guys again. The last time we were in that Canadian bubble, and you folks over there took that bubble. They were testing me about 4 times a day. On the third COVID test, I came back pregnant, man. I was like, shoot, what's going on here, man? I haven't gone anywhere. I almost didn't get out of the country, man, because my COVID test hadn't come back, and I was out for a Golden Boy show in San Antonio. I had to leave at 5 a.m.
We should say hello to Gilberto from the WBA who just joined, and I think that's an honor that he's joining this podcast.
Absolutely,
talk about your champion. So that's
absolutely, and you know what? The sanctioning. Go ahead.
You want to see that WBA title defended at 168 against Canelo, or you'd rather see maybe all the belts at 175 for the winner of Beterbiev, Joe Smith?
You're asking me or Gilberto?
You
both. That's
me. I think for me right now, I think because obviously they got a rematch. I assume they have a rematch clause. I believe it's probably legitimate. Canelo's a prideful guy. I don't think he's going to want to just have somebody walk away into the sunset when great fighters get beat. Ray Leonard did that when he fought Roberto Duran. I would really like to see Canelo and Bivol do it again. I think the compelling part is I don't foresee that fight happening at 175. Somebody else hit me up and go, hey, would you like to see Bivol fight Benavidez at 68? And I'm like, why would we go down to 68 when Canelo's the undisputed champion at 68? And I'm a huge fan of David Benavidez. Like I said, I'm not into decision-making. I'm just thinking kind of globally and, kind of my own 2 cents. But I really think right now the fire is, the smoke is really Canelo and Bivol again. And
I don't want to see Bivol either, like weakening himself to go down to 68. If you remember correctly, they did that to Chad Dawson when he fought
Andre Ward.
You know what? Yeah.
Like your guy's a 75-pounder. He's a 70 strong at 75. He's champion. I'd rather be champion with the win over Canelo at 175 than try to go down to 168 and suck every bit of strength out of me.
And that's why I leave that to the people that are real smart, that know how to navigate the business end. And I think in the end, Canelo has smart people. Dmitry has very smart people around him, and they'll make the right decision. What's going to be best. Best for him. I think he has a lot more leverage now.
100%.
I think if he wants fireworks and pyrotechnics on his ring walk, they might even give me and Russ pyrotechnics. The thing would probably blow up and we'll probably burn ourselves, but who knows? What the hell?
Yeah.
Is there any concern, do you think, Russ and Mike, that Bivol, now that he has this big win, that could deviate a little bit from his disciplined lifestyle? He's
not going to gain 75 pounds. He's not going to come in at 275 or no. I don't see that. I mean, he's a pretty disciplined guy, and you can see the warning signs with some guys, like, hey, he won this title and he's going to go spend all his money and he's going to get a DUI and he's going to end up in a strip club and he's going to be broke in 6 months. I really don't see that happening.
Yeah, and that's why I say the post-fight interview said a lot about him as a man, because they gave him an opportunity, that most guys would have gone crazy. I did this, I did that. Look how great I am. You underestimated me. I told you. He didn't do any of that. He acknowledged what he is. He recognized what he is, a fighter. He went into the ring confident in the tools that he had, and he exploited it, and he lived for the moment, that he rose to the occasion. That just doesn't happen. That's something that comes from within you as a person. So I agree with you, Mike. I don't think he's somebody who falls off the wagon and suddenly decides he's not going to train anymore.
No, I mean, he just sometimes great fighters are going to they're going to rise to the occasion, and they're going to beat other great fighters. And does it lessen Canelo? No. I'm a huge fan of Canelo. Believe me. I think Canelo's the guy that, look at all the different weight divisions he fights again. I think he's a guy that thrives, and he thrives and seeks challenges. And in this life, not everything's going to go your way. Not everything's going to go your way. But when you challenge yourself, you know, you can't win the lottery if you don't play.
Right.
You can't win the lottery if you don't play, and that's why I never win the lottery, because you know I don't play. But I mean, when you look at great athletes, and you guys are sports fans too, they're just something a little bit different. Did Michael Jordan win every basketball game that he ever played? No, damn near. But I mean, you know what I mean? No. Yeah. You're going to have failures, and that's what the failures will make the victory so much sweeter. I was in Montreal with Marcus Brown when he fought, you know, Arthur Beterbiev. And, you know, Marcus, man, he fought his butt off. He was just outgunned. He was outgunned. Yeah. You know, and it was a great atmosphere. The only thing missing was Russ, because, you know. But, I mean, it was that's just those things are going to happen. This was my second time working against Canelo. I had worked against Canelo with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
That's right.
You know, Canelo just had his way with everything that night. I've worked 3 fights against Deontay Wilder, you know, and he's knocking dudes stiff. I mean,
one was, I think one was it with Areola, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Actually, I'm sorry too. I had Gerald Washington, you know, and Areola. I've just been in a lot of the fights, you know, when Wilder has fought. And even though we didn't win, it's still, you know, from my perspective, I'm still being able to work those big fights. Russ and I can't control what happens when the bell rings. Our job is to mainly try to control things in between those rounds. We could get a guy that's bleeding really bad. Our job is to get him ready for the next round. We can't control what happens in those 3 minutes. We can hope for the best, but guess what? We got to prepare for the worst. And I've worked a fight with Russ, with Marcus Brown against Bordeaux Jack.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and Bordeaux Jack had probably and Marcus ends up suffering a equally bad cut when he fought Jean Pascal in the next fight. You just never know.
Okay. Russ, we have only a few minutes here. We're gonna let the conversation. We have to go soon. Any final thoughts on what's next for Canelo? Mike talked about the Bivol possibly rematch. Some people would like to still see Triple G at 168. I want to think your final thoughts, Russ, and also Mike, with the experience from this past weekend, and of course the judging, notwithstanding the judging, of course, as we avoided a big problem.
I think I'll let me cover the judging thing first. I just want to see if Mike agrees with this, but I think we need to start recording and tracking what judges are doing, because this business of them being allowed to do whatever they want with no repercussions, no accountability, no track record of what they've done. Their record should be on record the way a boxer's record is. This is what he scored in this fight. This is what he scored as opposed to his other judges. How often he was against his fellow judges. You know, all these. Although in this case they were all the same. All three of them had the same 4-0 score. So I don't know if it would have helped, but I think athletic commissions have to show that transparency, that they truly believe that they want to make judging better and that they want to make the judges accountable for what they do and what they see. Why did you score it that way? What did you see that forced you to score a 4-0 shutout for Canelo after 4 rounds when nobody else on earth saw that score? Nobody has come up and said, hey, what are you talking about? That's exactly the way we saw it. Nobody. No support whatsoever. So how is it that you're the only 3 guys who saw it that way? Something's not right about that. So I think that needs to be addressed, because athletic commissions need to regain a little bit of their credibility and their honesty and their protection of the fighters, because that's for both guys, not just for one guy. That said, look, like Mike said, Canelo has a lot of pride, and he's going to want that rematch. And of course, for Bivol, let's face it, at the end of the day, as much as I'd love to see a unification fight with him and Beterbiev, you know, Beterbiev first has to get by, you know, obviously Joe Smith, but the money does lie in Canelo's in the Canelo fight, you know, and in this business, you know, you're the management team. do I take a fight against the guy I never fought before and I don't know if I could win, or do I take a fight against the guy that's going to bring me more money and I've already beat him? It seemed like a pretty easy decision to make. So that's the way I see it going. I hope it's not at 68 because the size of Bivol, looking at him in the ring, I don't know what Mike thinks, but 68, that taking off that seven pounds is going to be treacherous on him, I believe, and I don't think it should be done. It'd be dangerous. In fact, I don't care what any nutritionist will say. No, I can get the weight off you and I can suck every last bit of liquid out of your body. Listen, he's at 175, champion at 175. They can never beat Canelo at 175. They can never take that away from him.
Those are great points, and I think when you talk about the judging too, I think the sanctioning bodies have to bear some. I'm not going to say responsibility, but they have to. Their interest has to be piqued. I sent a thing on Twitter to Lou DiBella, and I just said, because Lou's a promoter, you know what I mean, and I think there needs to be some kind of quality control, like you said. You put a guy in a room and you watch the video and say, why in the world did you score this round this way? What are we missing here? Was it effective aggression? Was it his defense? Was his ring generalship? Was it clear punching? And then you have to look, like Russ said, you have to look at a track record. I honestly thought Triple G beat Canelo pretty cleanly the first fight.
Yeah.
I really did. I really thought that Sergey Kovalev beat Andre Ward the first fight.
Yeah.
I thought Manny Pacquiao beat Tim Bradley when they gave Bradley the decision. It's boxing, and that's why we can have these discussions and not be that surprised. It's almost like we're kind of used to it. It's the price of doing business. We know the A-side fighters are going to get the benefit of the doubt. Russ was spot on. Nobody did anything that first round. Nobody deserved 10, and nobody deserved 9. They both. Both. If one of them deserved 9, they both did. If both of them deserved 10, they both did. Because, like Russ said, that round could be a pivotal round down the stretch. You're right. Based on the scoring, had Canelo dominated that last round, that fight's a draw. And to score that fight a draw when Dmitry clearly won it would have been something I would have had a hard time stomaching. All's well that ends well, but man, they had the ski mask ready, they had the duct tape.
Yes, they did.
They were getting ready to pull that shotgun out, man, and they were getting ready to rob us.
Yes, they were, brother. Yes, they were.
But thankfully, the good result, even though it should have been more than 115 and 113, Bivol has a big deserved victory. I'd still love to see the Berta be a fight for all the belts at some point in 2023, because I think the Bivol rematch against Canelo might be a tougher sell, because now all of a sudden how things flip, nobody thinks Canelo can win at 175 anymore. And that could be a mistake as well, thinking that.
Yes, it could be.
We'd love to see, of course, Bivol in action again. I think people now who didn't know him as well going into this bout will want to see him in action. So regardless of when that is, Mike, I hope we can chat again in the future. We always appreciate you taking some time to do the podcast. It's always obviously a blast to be able to talk boxing with you.
No, man, you guys are outstanding. Russ, man, you take care. Matt, same to you guys. Anytime you guys ever want to get a hold of me, you know where to reach me.
And this was your opportunity to pop your suspenders at me and Basil and the rest of us. You're king of the hill now for now.
Can I say one thing really quick?
Go ahead,
Mike.
Mike.
Don't mind. I run the homicide school here in LA. For the
homicide school where you learn to do homicide?
Yes, it's a 2-week school for homicide investigators.
Okay.
Yesterday was our first day of a new school. We do one about every other month. I've been running this school about 12 years. Investigators from all over California and the West Coast. One of the detectives stands up and introduced herself. Afterwards, she tells me, my grandfather was a cut man. He worked with a lot of top fighters, and I can't make this up. It was the granddaughter of Joe Chavez.
I was going to get it. I'd say Joe Chavez. That's nice.
And Joe Chavez is one of my mentors. Stitch Duran was my boxing coach in the Air Force. But the one that spent the most time with me when I was just starting off doing this years ago was Joe Chavez. And she sent me a message because I took a picture with her, and I was on a different podcast yesterday and I mentioned it. And she said that she shared it with her grandmother and her mom, and they both were in tears because her grandmother knows me. And they said, wow, talk about paying it forward. hear my grandfather mentored you, and now you're mentoring me.
Wow.
So I just thought I'd share that with you guys because the blessings that I've been afforded the last week or so, man, it's very humbling.
Well, if you see her, you tell her that Joe's reputation stretched a long way. That, you know, I was fortunate enough to have worked the corner with him. I like to consider him a friend of mine, and so his reputation went a long way. And tell her, yeah, he was a great man.
You know what? I just took a screenshot of our conversation here. I'm going to see her in the morning. I may even send her the text, and I will definitely let her know.
All right, brother.
Hey,
Nice
guys.
talking to you, Mikey.
You too, guys.